Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, this is Denez the Human, and welcome to this special Games Guide edition of Rome Total War, where today we look at this event here, the Gaius Marius event. This is a key, in fact the key event in Rome Total War. It takes this solid, if unspectacular army here, the Stati, Principi and Triarii, and it turns them into the brutal OP army that we know and love, that killing machine of legionnaires. And today though, what we've really asked is, can we remove this from the game? Because yes, whilst it does make the Romans nice and powerful, and obviously it does make them a big challenge later on if you're not playing as one of the Roman factions, we want to see if we can rebalance the game. I've obviously done quite a bit of trying to rebalance the barbarians by giving them new buildings and new units, but now we're going to look at removing this, because I think this is the key difference between rebalancing this game and keeping it a little bit too much in the Roman favour. So can we change this around? Yes, actually yes we can, and all it will take is one line of text. What exactly were the Marian Reforms anyway? Well, Gaius Marius in 107 BC set forward a sort of reorganisation of the Roman army. See, before, much like many other ancient civilisations, they were essentially a militia force. That meant that they were citizens, they would supply their own armour, and they were basically called up to a war by the consul of that year. Now, what Gaius Marius wanted to do, essentially make it professional and turn it into the legions that we get to know and love. This is really the army we think about when we think of the Roman army. That is Gaius Marius's army. On the whole, the Romans end up with a good boost to their armies. The legionary cohort here become the standard unit. These pretty much correspond to the Triarii in terms of them coming from the large city. But of course, these guys with 10, 14, 22 are far more powerful than the Principes you had before. Even the corresponding early legionary cohort is a big step up. 8, 12, 16 turns into 10, 14, 17. As well here, good morale, good stamina. Overall, you end up with a much better set of units. Even things like the archers here have that little bit of extra defence. They have long-range missiles and good stamina. The original archers were incredibly basic, and you'll see throughout the army you get these kind of very light troops turn into a far more solid unit, and indeed you start to be able to hire some much more powerful units as you go on. Eventually, of course, the Romans end up with the urban cohort. Frankly, these guys are bananas on toast, and the AI is not going to win any battles against armies of these chaps. So yes, how are we going to actually readdress the balance? Because the rest of the factions don't really gain much from the reforms. They do, it should be said, gain a little bit of a buff to their generals. The Egyptians, for example, lose the flimsy chariots. The Armenes, Parthians gain themselves lovely cataphract generals. But on the whole, it's very, very mild for the other factions. For the Romans, it's a big, big boon. Why then did Creative Assembly bother to put this particular event in the game, especially as it seems to make things so imbalanced? Well, to some extent it's historical precedent, but of course what it does mean is you get this, the entire map bathed in blue, green and red, and you end up facing massive, massive Roman armies because of course they are too strong for the other factions. The only thing that really stops them is normally yourself. Now obviously, as I said, it's partly historical precedent, but it's also because this game is very Roman centric. Take Britain for example, Londinium, London, Ibericum, York, Devon, Chester. These are all the Romanized names, and that's very much how this game is. It's Roman centric, and it wants to tell that particular story more than the others. Triggering the event is pretty simple. Once one of the 4 Roman factions has built itself an imperial palace on the Italian peninsula, this will activate. So essentially that means building a huge city, 24,000 people, and it means it needs to be one of these cities here on the Italian peninsula, but that does also include Sicily. So you'll notice over here Mediolanum is 1 turn from the imperial palace. That means when we end our turn, we'll get ourselves the Gaius Marius event. And the rebels want ceasefire. Yes, we'll take that. And we'll see as we end our turn. Yes, a new man, Gaius Marius. The event has cropped up just as we would expect. The file in question is the Desca_strat file. We use this quite a lot, so you're probably used to by now heading into data, down to world to go and find it. Inside there is maps, campaign, imperial campaign, and there is our lovely frequented file Desca_strat. Now today, to actually do what we need to in here, it's not about editing it per se, we actually need to add an extra line of text in. To do that, we need to go and find a good template of it elsewhere. Now luckily, Barbarian Invasion and actually Medieval 2 Total War use the Rome Total War script as a basis, so we can use those to help us. So if you head inside Barbarian Invasion, we are now going to find the equivalent Desca_strat file. So it's pretty much the same route: data, world, maps, campaign, Barbarian Invasion this time, and then Desca_strat. Let's open that up and I'll show you what I mean. As soon as we open up this file, you'll notice that the Marian Reforms are referred to almost immediately. Just underneath the start date here, they are here labelled as disabled. Now that is really useful for us because it means we have an idea of where we need to put this line inside Rome Total War, just above the Brigand and the Pirate Spawn value. So I'm going to copy that and we're going to head back over to the Rome Total War file. As we open up the Rome Total War version of Desca_strat then, you'll notice that underneath end date you don't see any reference to the Marian Reforms at all. It just goes straight to Brigand Spawn value and the Pirate Spawn value. But of course we do now know where we need to paste our particular line. It's 2 spaces before, might as well keep up that particular formatting. So now we've got this in here, it should completely work. So let's save this up and let's load up the new game. In order to test this out then, I'm going to start a new campaign as the Roman Julii. Now it should be stated that anything you change inside Desca_strat will only change for a new game that you begin. So it's worth bearing in mind that any of your current save files, you won't be able to remove the Marian Reforms. So let's get on with this example then, shall we? Over here we have a Retium. It has 4,000 people in it. So obviously we're going to have to add some population in order to get it up to 24,000 nice and quickly. So here we are, 24,000 in Arretium. That means now we can start to build the Governor's Palace and upgrade this eventually to the Imperial Palace. A few turns down the line then and our Imperial Palace is just 1 turn away from completion, and with that we'll be able to upgrade this slightly boring looking set of troops. So we'll end our turn, and normally we would see ourselves get the Marius Reforms, but on this occasion I think you'll find it's not going to come up. Indeed, just the Senate being angry at you as ever it was. And yes, indeed, if you go on here, we can now not get ourselves the Marian troops at all. We have ourselves just the plain old army of Republican Rome. And there we go. It honestly was as simple as that one line in the text. You may be asking what difference that all those changes actually makes, because surely the Principes are still pretty decent troops. Indeed, they're perfectly fine, but you will find that both the Armenian and Numidian legionnaires are almost exact copies. They got 7 attack, 11 missile, 16 defence. Sure, the upkeep and recruitments are slightly more for them, and they do take 2 turns. But with good stamina, they do actually have their advantages too. You no longer have just sheer power on your side. Without the post-Marian legionnaires, the Romans might well find themselves struggling in infantry encounters, particularly when they face some strong barbarian units like the Chosen Swordsman here. The Romans will pretty much have lost one of their key attributes, the fact that they pretty much can win any infantry battle. The Triarii are of course pretty strong units, and whilst they are decent spearmen, they can't form a phalanx like many of the factions can, and that will put them at a certain disadvantage. Normally they can blast through that with sheer power, but without the Marian Reforms they might well find it harder to get through the top tier units. And the infantry is where it was looking good, because don't even get me started on archers. The Roman archers are pathetic. They're nowhere near the god tier units that are these chosen archer warband. They should really do excel when it comes to these. It's a shame they never get to use them. But whilst the Romans do have the slight advantage of people like Spain and Britain not having any archers at all, essentially their archers are basically there in name only. Once people start getting long range missiles, they're effectively out of the game completely. The story doesn't really improve for the Roman Equites, to be honest, because they are way too light to be dealing with the heavy cav of the later game. Even the Dacians here have a pretty powerful noble cavalry unit, one that you will see with the Scythians, with the Gauls, with the Germans. Now, even in the east, there are obviously the cataphracts of Armenia and Parthia and Cilicia, and of course there's companion cavalry also in Macedonia. The Roman Equites are just not going to hold up. They are not strong enough to take on the other factions. Now, all this isn't to say that the pre-Marian Roman army is terrible. Of course it's not. You can see here they clearly have a big advantage when it comes to siege equipment. And we've used these chaps for years and years. the Hastati, the Principes, the Triarii. They're good, solid units, and you can certainly make use out of them and win many a war. But hopefully what we are doing is trying to just negate the massive advantage they had. Yes, you will be outgunned with your cavalry and your archers, but in general you can still use your variety of troops to win the day. Realistically, the Romans are always going to be a decent faction, especially considering they have themselves 4 factions that are strongly allied to each other. That in itself is always going to put them in a strong position. Take for example Melkor's time-lapse here. He did this time-lapse without the Marian Reforms, and it certainly made a difference to how strong the Roman factions competed. Whilst the Roman factions haven't been destroyed here, they're certainly not as strong as they usually are. And to be honest, that's really what we're looking for. A more balanced faction at the end of the day, and I think that is what we've achieved here. In a similar vein, when I simulated playing through without the Marian Reforms, I did find the Brutii did their normal thing, smashing up Greece and going to grab the Scythian lands to the north, but I have found that the Julii and the Scipiones have struggled. It should be said that I've got my little boost to barbarian building structures, so they might well be getting a slight advantage from that, but to be honest, it gets an awful lot weirder as we go on through time. As we continue forward through time then, we get to a stage that I've never seen in all my time playing Rome Total War. That is the AI actually besieging Rome. And of course last time we could see the Brutii were really doing very well, but the Britons have completely obliterated their empire. Only a couple settlements now remain. It's really been torn to shreds, which is interesting really, because it suggests that the Brutii have a good chance at smashing through all these factions. But something about the Britons, they just find really hard to beat. The Britons, I might add, don't really have any archers or normal cavalry, but maybe a mixture between the chariots and the infantry is just too much for them. Obviously, this would play out differently if I decided to give it another roll of the dice. In fact, yes, it's something I've never seen here before, which is Dacia actually doing... Well, they're alive, but they're down here in the Mediterranean, which is odd indeed, albeit they're not really longed for the world. Their only general is this guy over here who is 79. Sadly, they're about to go. But if you look at all the forces over here in Italy, I think you can see the way that this game's about to go. But oh yes, I had to just play a little bit more to see Rome finally fall. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen, Rome has fallen. The Britons have 50 settlements, and indeed, Rule Britannia is the song that is on the waves here today. I think we can certainly say we've succeeded in balancing out the game a little bit. To be fair, the Romans did pretty well for a while. They still sit here in Byzantium. Yes, Constantinople one day will rise and rebuild the Roman Empire, but for now it certainly seems like we've managed to balance out the Romans without the Marian Reforms getting in the way. So I think I'll leave it here for now, ladies and gentlemen. Do enjoy experimenting with this. Do let me know in the comments below what results you find when you get on with this, because I'd love to see how this plays out on a normal playthrough. Obviously, I've just been pressing end turn here as the rebels, so it's a little bit of a different result, I suppose. But I will leave you here for now. I'm Thomas, this is Untitled Chapter, and this has been our guide to removing the Marian Reforms. Thank you, and goodbye. Shoot the flames of death into their eyes. Oh no, we're gonna die! Coward, 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 coward. Stop, sir! You're supposed to die! Run away, run away, run away, run away, run away! Our ballistas can actually shoot our own gates. Okay, let's get on with this battle. Run away.